Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis, and here's what matters tonight. Light rail is coming down the track, just one piece of what planners see as an integrated public transportation system that will let more of us park our cars. And parking cars could have a dramatic effect on our traffic. In fact, if each of us randomly took one car off the road 1 out of every 10 days, we would eliminate peak hour congestion. Let me say that again because it bears repeating. If each of us took one car off the road every 10 days, then we could end peak hour congestion. And it's our choice which day we choose and which way we choose. We can carpool, maybe we can drop a spouse off at work on the way to our own job. Lots of different ways we can do that. Maybe we can even take the bus. And the bus is what I opted for recently when I looked at my schedule for a 10-day period. I actually found only one portion of a trip that I could reasonably take by bus, and that was from the Ward's Corner transfer station in Norfolk to downtown Hampton. And I did get to Hampton in time for my meeting, but what played out in between was a human drama I just don't think I'll ever forget. I've come to think of it as a tale of two bus drivers. One driving a bus that was already 1 hour and 15 minutes late, boarded her passengers and announced she wasn't leaving for another 15 minutes, whereupon she unwrapped a sandwich and started to eat it. Just when I thought our drama was going to have a very ugly fight scene, our hero arrived on the scene, bus driver number 2, who had already been in touch with the dispatcher and worked out a solution. With a sincere apology and a winning smile, he invited us off the bus of despair and onto the bus of hope. There are two other unforgettable characters in this story, both passengers on the bus, and I'll have their stories for you in a final thought at the end of this broadcast. But this whole experience convinced me we needed to turn this book into a movie, and our Lisa Godley was game for the assignment.
Come on, guys.
With tickets in hand, the crew and I left WHRO headed for the closest HRT stop. It wasn't long before we saw the number 2 bus roll down Hampton Boulevard and stop right in front of us. On board were riders who, like us, had purchased their tickets at a local grocery store. Our one-day Max Pass cost us $5.50. Most on board were regular riders who, unlike us, knew exactly where they were going. Since we didn't, we used the HRT website and plugged in our start and stop points the night before. Our plan? To ride a regular city bus to the station at Salter and Princess Anne and then take the new Metro Area Express bus, also known as the MAX, to the Virginia Beach oceanfront. We knew in a car it would take us 40 minutes to get there, and we figured on a regular city bus that time would more than double. Juliette Carteret confirmed that theory. She spends 4 hours a day on the bus 5 days a week. Surprisingly, she doesn't complain.
I think it's great. I think people should take it more. It's just that there's not that many buses, and I mean, I live in Virginia Beach, so it's a long ride. I take 2 hours to go.
2 hours in each direction is too long for me. But how much time would the MAX shave off our trip? Juliette said she'd ridden it once but wouldn't again because it took her too far from her destination, and her ODU bus pass doesn't cover the cost. Dave McCann has also ridden the MAX.
Well, I think perhaps it could be cheaper, but they need more of them too.
One thing we learned about riding the bus is to make sure you board on the right side of the street. We didn't. That meant it took us about an hour to get to our transfer station as opposed to about 15 minutes.
As a result, we missed our quick connection and we had to wait for the noon express. Once on board the MAX, we could really relax. The seats were wider and a lot more plush than an HRT bus, and there was plenty of room to stretch out. There was hardly anyone on board our midday run, but we would learn later that during rush hour, that simply isn't the case. People getting off work in Norfolk heading to the oceanfront and vice versa are quick to pile on. We were about 20 minutes into our MAX ride when the express made its only scheduled stop, near Independence and Princess Anne. Then it was off to the oceanfront. It took us just 40 minutes to reach the stop at 19th and Pacific and complete our trip. Our total commute time, minus rider error, about 55 minutes. That's just 15 minutes longer than if we'd driven. Not bad. And that's the very reason that Joanne Combs rides the MAX regularly.
45 minutes max. 45 minutes max. And if I take the 20 to go to Norfolk, it takes me 3 hours or more. So cuts down a whole lot of time. Yeah.
So if you could describe the Max in a couple of words, what would you say?
Fabulous. It's a lot better for people that, have to get somewhere quick. This bus here, you get on it, you make one stop, and you're in downtown Norfolk before you even know it.
We certainly can't argue with that. For What Matters, I'm Lisa Godley.
I love the fact that Lisa was honest enough to admit rider error. I had some rider error in mine, too. Joining us tonight, Hampton Roads Transit's Vice President for Public Affairs and Communications, James Toscano, and HRT's Senior Vice President of Transit Operations, Homer Carter. Thanks to both of you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
I was telling our guests before we came on that when I first did this whole 1 day in 10 thing, it really was not about the show. It was about, let's just see if I can do this. It was kind of an interesting exercise. And the great thing is that the website, James Toscano, has some really neat calculators you can use that will help you do exactly what Lisa did, which was to figure out how to get from point A to point B, so you don't necessarily have to know the bus schedule back and forth.
Our website, gohrt.com, has a great feature. It's called Google Transit, and actually HRT is the first transit system in Virginia to partner with the internet search giant Google to create this system, Google Transit. So you can put in your origin, your destination, and it will calculate the trip for you. And we really liked it. It actually will tell you how much you'll save by using transit as opposed to driving. And
that was the other very interesting piece of that, is that I think you will save whatever your gas money might be. But the calculation on this is, I think, more significant and more accurate because it takes into account sort of your wear and tear and your time, and I suppose it takes all that into account because it's really quite shocking when you see how much you can save.
It certainly does. It's a wake-up call for people, and I think it's a much truer calculation than just the cost of the fare versus gas. You know,
the other thing I noticed, and Lisa noted this as well in the piece about the Max ride, one of the things that I observed on the Max is that and I wouldn't have anticipated this, just the relief and the ability to relax and not have to worry about who's trying to get in front of you and whether you're at the speed limit and whether there's an accident or whatever it is. Yeah. I was really kind of not expecting that degree of relief, but it's very palpable.
It is. It's a great appeal to people who have a choice in their transportation.
Yeah.
In fact, I frequently use the Max, and when I'm not using the Max, I'm driving my car and I enter 264 at Independence Boulevard, and that can be a very stressful entrance onto 264. But when I'm riding the Max, I get to get on at the park and ride. I let the driver take care of the driving. I get to play on my BlackBerry and look at the news for the day and have a great experience, frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I was sort of focused on it as a as a money-saving issue and as an environmental issue because we've talked about this business of ending peak hour construction or congestion without having to add another ribbon of highway, but that was sort of an extra added benefit. Yeah, please.
One caveat to that. We designed those buses especially for the commuter routers. And also, there's Wi-Fi connection with those buses.
Right, it's a great point, and we were able to use that as well. Mr. Carter, I don't envy you a bit with your job, because I think you have a huge job to try to organize this community in a way that makes sense with all of the bridges, all of the tunnels, and now all of the increased traffic, which has very little room for, very little room to accommodate a breakdown and that sort of thing. One of the things we note is that the experience that I was describing at the top of the show started because of a breakdown in the tunnel. Nobody on the bus nobody driving a bus had any control over that. I wonder how the traffic is affecting your work as you think about how you route those buses.
Well, as you know, Hampton Roads is a very congested area for transporting across our great bridge, as we call it, the bridge that always causes us problems. However, we do our planning around those bridges. We have to.
Sure. Are you having to build in then additional time on these routes to accommodate
it's imperative that you can only build so much in because of the connectivities with other routes. And some days it works perfectly. Other days,
Sure.
well,
It just is what it is.
it's just what
yeah.
it is.
And I want to ask both of you this, because I will say that as a passenger and as a new passenger, I was entirely clueless when I arrived at the station, and I found it a little bit challenging to figure out where I was supposed to stand to collect the bus. But there are enough nice people there that will help you do that. The episode when the bus driver, whose bus was an hour and 15 minutes late anyway, wanted to sit there for another 15 minutes and eat the sandwich. I got to tell you, I was the one who was probably going to start the fight about that. It just seemed to me, are you kidding me? The bus is already 15 minutes late, and now you're going to sit and wait another 15 minutes. I'm guessing there's probably a logical explanation for it, and while there might be some customer service training issues there, is there a logical explanation for some of that?
Well, I'm a little disappointed to hear that.
Yeah.
But
It was redeemed, as I also noted. But yeah,
all of our bus operators are trained to react in a positive manner, such as the second bus operator.
Right.
I'm quite sure that the first bus operator had instructions from our central dispatch, and for some reason they did not.
And she was clearly following an instruction. That was not. I don't think it was her just deciding she was going to go on strike for 15 minutes and just make us wait. I don't think that was it at all.
But I'm quite sure if just sometimes we have to use a little common sense. And,
yeah.
Hopefully, the second bus operator.
That was so impressive, because this guy just came up, called the dispatcher, got it all squared away. It was a very impressive thing, because he got on her bus, he talked to her, he talked to all of us, and that's the thing that was so interesting, is that what occurred to me is that what people really want is just some communication about what's going on and when is, what the situation is. But the thing I'll tell you that I found most interesting about that episode is that I was the only one who was upset about it. Everybody else on the bus was like, well, that's how it goes. And I guess that was an awareness building for me, because it sounds like to me that people have sort of, regular bus riders have learned to accept that the tunnel's going to be backed up and the bus is going to be late, and that's going to be how it goes sometimes.
When you're crossing the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, it's more than just buses that are experiencing delay. And when there's an accident at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, the entire region pays for it, vehicular traffic and transit also. And so the bus operators and the bus passengers are dealing with that that same issue that everybody else on the roads.
But I'm going to tell you,
it's
much nicer to deal with the back up in the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel sitting on the bus. I'm not going to lie to you. You got to sit there for an hour. It's nice not to have to worry about whether your foot's on the gas or the brake. No,
and you could be using our Wi-Fi.
There you go. The Wi-Fi. That's the coolest thing about this Max bus. I'm going to tell you. The other interesting piece of this, and I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize it, you all have a very interesting funding formula for Hampton Roads Transit. And Hampton Roads Transit, for those of you who haven't been here since the dawn of time, is the result of the merger of the South Side and the Peninsula systems. And you're looking now at the breakdown of those sources of funding. And what I think is interesting about this, and I think a lot of people may not really realize, is the element that's marked local, which is something on the order of 30%. But boy, it all doesn't come from one source, does it?
No, it's a mix of funds, which is really common to operators throughout the United States. There's a mix of local funds, state funding, and federal funding, and also the fare that a passenger pays into the system.
But even within that 30% of the pink area that's marked local, that 30% there, that's even segmented further.
Sure. Every city in our service area that HRT provides service to, that's Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Hampton, and Newport News, they all pay a different amount to HRT for the service that we provide. So often people will say, well, why is the service greater in Norfolk than it is, say, in Suffolk? Well, that is because the city of Norfolk views transit in a certain way, makes a certain investment in it, and the result is additional service out on the streets. And so we value the service we have in every community, but the service levels are different, and that's a result of the local funding that's provided by that community.
That must be a great challenge, though, because if one community says, yes, I will support the plan that you've put forward, and another community says, yeah, it's not as important to us, we'll do a little bit less. Because you have to make those buses run across the system, I'm guessing that's a real challenge.
It is a challenge because we use service hours as our measurement as to how and when we're going to run service. it's very difficult to plan a route, and all of a sudden that route has to come to an end because the next municipality does not want to support that run to continue. It's unfortunate, but we try to do the best we can with the resources that we receive.
Well, sure enough, it's just a very sort of complex picture.
Kathy,
as you
I considered a veto over, each community has a veto, frankly, over the regional services that we provide, because one neighbor can, may not value a route in the same way that the other neighbor does. And
that's
so,
interesting.
it makes it a challenge in providing truly regional services. So we are really fortunate and glad to be providing the MAX to the region, but it can be an extreme challenge. And the interesting thing that puts our community at a disadvantage is that there's many other communities in the United States, including Northern Virginia, that have a dedicated source of revenue that goes to fund those services. So you can plan more regionally if you don't have to go back to each individual community and say, can we run a route here? Can we run a route there?
Yeah, it's such a great point. Did I understand that you just got back from Phoenix?
I did, and they're an example of a community that has a dedicated revenue source.
How's that work? What did you see there, and can you give us a sense of what they're doing in that community?
Well, I went for the most part because they are the last to open the light rail system in the United States. They opened just a few days after Christmas this year, and they have a fantastic system. Interestingly, I think people should know it's a great system, and they are building it at over $70 million a mile. And a lot of people think that what we're doing in Norfolk is expensive, and it is. It's transportation infrastructure. It's expensive stuff. But we're building in Norfolk at just under $40 million a mile.
So 70 million vice 40 million.
That's correct.
Really interesting.
So they have a great system, and they're paying a lot of money. They have a lot of investment that goes into growing transit. They have a 25-year plan that has extensions throughout the community, and it's very, very impressive.
And will theirs, like ours, one hopes, have the kind of connections to it for bus opportunities connecting to those light rail stations?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bus connections to light rail is critically important. It's the system, the light rail system, is only as good as it's the connections to it.
And of course, light rail at the moment is scheduled to go from downtown Norfolk to Newtown Road, and of course the hope is that it will extend beyond that. And there have been some very interesting developments just within the last week or so with regard to studies and expansion, the prospect for expansion.
HRT's board recently awarded a contract to begin study of extension to both the Virginia Beach oceanfront and the Norfolk Naval Station. That is a requirement of us by House Bill 6028. It was a bill carried by Delegate Bob Tata that requires that HRT study the extension of the system in Hampton Roads.
That could be very, very interesting to see how all that works out. And certainly, as we look at this economy that's forcing more people sort of to think about their transportation differently, HRT also has some other great options if you find yourself in that circumstance. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know all the things that are out there, because I guess if I and a couple of my pals who would agree to carpool with me, that might be a tall order. But if that were to be the case, I could probably call HRT and get some service.
Absolutely. Through our traffics program, we offer van pooling programs, so you can get some of your friends together. You say you and 9 of your closest friends can rent a van from us, and then you can split the cost of that ride. We also have carpooling incentives. You will actually get rewards if you carpool with your friends. It's real. It's a great program. Wow. It's called New Ride.
Is that the New Ride thing? Yeah.
Yes.
That's really interesting, too, because if you get a chance to look at this on the website, what you'll find is it will, and it's all very secure and what have you, but it will tell you who lives in your neighborhood and where they're going. You have to, of course, enter your information in first. They don't just pop up everybody's plans for you, but you could at least see who's sort of going your way. And that's a way that if you didn't want to regularly commit to a commute, Thursday you have to be in Virginia Beach or you have to be in Newport News or whatever, you can find out if anybody in your neighborhood is headed in that direction. I thought that was a great service.
There's not a single mode of transportation that works for everyone. Yeah. For some people, carpooling fits. For others, the Max bus will fit. For others, there's other opportunities. They may be at home telecommuting,
right.
And so
that's a great point.
There's not one role for everybody.
So, Mr. Carter, do you ride the bus much, or are you just done by the end of the day of working all those routes around? You just say, I forget about it. I'm getting my car and going home.
I try to get out
Yeah.
at least twice a week to ride the system.
Just to ride it around.
And I go anonymously.
Yeah, that's
Of
smart.
course, most of them know me.
I
but
would say most of them probably know you.
in the evening, I'll just
Yeah.
sneak on. And,
Yeah, it's a great point. And a lot of the area grocery stores have tickets if you're interested
Sure.
in doing that. You have to have exact change if you're just interested in sort of a one-way deal, just so you know, because I made that mistake. I went to the grocery store to buy the books at the grocery store, but you got to have the exact change. So you never know, But it's a service that is very dependent on the cities in this community to fund it, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this program, so that you would have a better understanding of when you see a bus riding down the street, you kind of wonder how that works or why the bus doesn't come here and it does go there. You'll have a better sense of how that rolls in this community. You should pardon that dreadful Friday night pun, but there you go. So the calculator is terrific. It will calculate the cost of gas. And does it take into account your time or not so much, just the sort of the wear and tear on your car?
No, it does. Oh, no.
I'm sorry, on the calculator that will tell you which bus to take and all the rest.
I don't know that it tells you how much time you lose from driving, but
see, that's the impressive thing, because if you add that in on top of it, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It certainly tells you how much time your trip is going to take.
Well, the great thing is nobody is saying you have to do this every day, and there are some trips that are just, it's not going to be practical for you to take the bus, and we all know that. So the idea is just to look and see if it does work for you once in a while. And I don't think there's probably a better way to get down to the oceanfront than to take that Max down to the oceanfront. And I made note of that as the weather gets better, and you try to fight for those parking places at the oceanfront. Right. That's a good thing to know. Mr. Carter, thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate it. And Mr. Toscano, thank you as well for being with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, you never know who you will meet on the bus, and I'll be back in just a moment with a final thought about two amazing people I met along the way. Well, I arrived at the bus station that day looking pretty confused, and a very nice young man named Kenny greeted me, introduced himself, and told me he's a fan of this broadcast, which I got to tell you, naturally endeared me to him. From his clothing and the fact that the bus was eventually bound for Newport News, I sort of took him for a shipyard worker. I figured he was on his way to work at the shipyard. No, he said, I am on my way to the VA hospital. I said, well, are you a veteran? And no, ma'am, he said, I just volunteer there a few times a week. I'm training for a medical career, and the vets just seem to need me. It was a remarkable story. Well, Kenny made sure I got on the right bus, and sitting next to me once I did was an older gentleman who was really growing more anxious as the wait went on. I was supposed to get on the 6 a.m. I was supposed to get on the bus at 6 a.m. for an 8:30 appointment at the VA, he said, and if I miss that appointment, I may have to wait all day if they see me at all. Well, by this time, it was already close to 8:30, and fortunately, the tunnel was clear, and in the brief ride across the harbor, I learned that my seatmate was a member of the class of 1959, a student at the all-black Booker T. Washington High School in Norfolk. He won a 4-year ride scholarship to a college in Pennsylvania, but he described as impetuous his decision to leave college and join the Army. There were no girls at that college, he explained, and that was pretty important to me as a young man. Well, after a few years in the service that took him to the jungles of Vietnam, he finished his education, went to law school, and settled in California. What brought you back here, I asked. Well, he said, believe it or not, I was the first African-American judge in Bakersfield, California, and I'm sad to say that all that power went to my head. My life fell apart, he said. I left the bench and eventually came back here to start over. I've been doing substitute teaching, and with all I've learned about life, I think that's what the Lord wants me to do, he said. Two extraordinary people on that bus on that morning. I was definitely 2 for 2 when it came to fascinating traveling mates. It was a great privilege to hear their stories, and it was really enjoyable once we got going just to sit back, relax, and enjoy the day and the company. But for bus transportation to work for all of us, it has to be more reliable and deeper. And that is no shock to the folks at HRT. In fact, they'd like nothing better than to provide just that kind of service. It's clear to me that whatever transportation solution we devise will probably have at least 3 components to it. One will be tolls, another will probably be construction, and then the final component will become even more important over time. And that is changing the way we think about getting around. My little bus experiment pointed up how much of my own transportation life is habit-driven. how often I jump in the car without thinking about whether there might be a public transportation option or whether my daughter could drop me off on her way to school. Trust me, dropping her off on my way to work is not going to happen. She takes the car. So I have an invitation for you. Why not take a look at your own calendar over the next 10 days? Now, log on to gohrt.com and use their online calculator to see whether there are any trips you could reasonably make by bus. You can also sign up to share rides with people in your neighborhood. We talked a little bit about that tonight. Again, nobody's asking you to commit to a carpool or ride the bus forever every day, just once every 10 days. And now, coming full circle, if we all randomly take one car off the road every 10 days, we could end peak hour congestion without pouring a drop of concrete. And that's a small change that could make a very big difference. That's it for us tonight on What Matters. Here's a look at what we're planning in the weeks to come. Lots coming up. Next week, it's an editorial roundtable. We'll consider real estate and foreclosures in Hampton Roads, port privatization in the future for Michael Vick, among other issues. And later, are you going on a vacation this year, or are you opting for a staycation? Get that Max bus to the beach. You can do a good staycation. In the weeks ahead, we'll look at Destination Hampton Roads and what tourism planners are doing to bring out-of-town dollars to the region. So I hope you'll be joining us then. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We'll see you again for another edition of What Matters.